All right. Hello, Rick. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Karuna. Everybody's saying where they're from. For me, I recall in an old song from my youth. Wherever I may roam, where I lay my head is home. That's where I'm from these days. Wherever I may roam. Oh, Julie. Oh, Jayantha. Tomorrow night at 11:30, I get my flight back to New Jersey. Then get to Empty Cloud Wednesday morning, probably about 9ish or 10, something like that. Hello, Perennial. Hooray. Yeah, it's so nice to go to the airport at 9 o'clock at night. Oh boy. Flying east is always tougher than flying west because the time is what it is. Here, staying with Bante at the one and only Colorado Buddhist Vihara. I get to go for a walk, and not even 10 minutes in the walk, and then I can see the whole Front Range. I can see all the Rocky Mountains. So every day when I go for a walk, I can see the Rocky Mountains. And now for the next month, I'm going to be seeing northern New Jersey. Quite a downgrade. All right. I think we can probably share screen. How long do we have you for? Till the end of May, not exactly all the way the end, because I'm going to California early to take part in the Bhikkhuni ordination. Tataloka has asked if I could come a little bit earlier than I expected. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Ryan says that must be nice to see the mountains. Yes. Snow-capped mountains has always been probably my most favorite site in nature, ever since I was a little kid. So do we officially know that it is May 26th? May 26th, I may or may not be there. I don't know yet. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm still waiting on flight tickets and all that. Perennial, have I been to Bodh Gaya? No, I'm going in November, hopefully. I mean, the tickets are already bought. I have to do my, excuse me, I have to do my passport and all that kind of stuff. But end of November, beginning of December, I'm in India. Oh no, but I'm so good with the tents. That's because I have a lot of experience in lay life, and then also putting the tents up and down at Bhavana multiple times a year for 8 years. So that's why I have experience with event tents. All right, we are past time now. We'll get started. Let's do our chanting. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Atupamaya sabbe sang satanang sukha kamatang. Pasitva kamato mettang sabbasate subhaveye. Sukhi bhaveyang niduko ahang nichang ahang viya. Hita cha me sukhi hontu majata chatadverino. Imam hi gammatiketami satta hontu sukhi sada. Tato paranjarajyesu chakkavalesu jantuno. Samanta Chakavalesu Sattanante Supanino Sukino Puggalo Buddha Attabhava Gatasiyung Tatta Iti Pumacheva Arya Anarya Picha Devanara Apayata Tattadasa Disa Suchati Ahang avirohomi, abhyapajohomi, anigohomi, sukhiyatinang pariharami. Ahang viya mahyang achariyupajjaya mata pitaro hitta satta majjatika satta veri satta vera hontu abhyapajja hontu aniga hontu Sukhi attanang pariharantu dukkha muchantu yattaladda sampattito magvigachantu kammasaka emasming vihare emasming gocharagame emasming nagare emasming ratte emasming chakkavale sarajana samsimattaka devata sabbe satta sabbe pana sabbe bhuta sabbe puggala sabbe attabhava pariyapanna sabba ittyo sabbe purissa sabbe arya sabbe anarya sabbe deva sabbe manusa sabbe amanusa sabbe vinipattika Avera hontu abhyapaja hontu aniga hontu sukhi attanang pariharantu dukkha muchantu yattaladda sampattito ma vigachantu kammasaka. All right, English. Having seen that all beings, like oneself, have a desire for happiness, one should methodically develop loving friendliness for all beings. May I be happy and free from suffering, and always like myself. May my friends, neutral persons, and the hostile be happy too. May all beings in this village, in this state, in other countries, and all the world systems be ever happy. May all persons, individuals, beings, creatures, and all the world systems be ever happy. So too may all women, men, noble ones, non-noble ones, God, humans, and beings in the lower worlds be happy. May all beings in the 10 directions be happy. May I be free from affliction. May I be free from hatred. May I be free from worry. May I live happily as I am. So also may my teachers, spiritual guides, parents, and friendly, indifferent, and hostile beings be free from hatred. May they be free from affliction. May they be free from worry. May they live happily. May they be released from suffering. May they not be deprived of their fortune justly acquired. All have Kamma as their own. May all who are in this temple, in this village, town, country, galaxy, and may all higher beings, devas who are in this place, all beings, all living things, all creatures, all persons, all those who have arrived at a state of individuality, all women, all men, all noble ones, all non-noble ones, all gods, all humans, all non-humans, all those who have fallen into woeful states, be free from hatred. May they be free from worry. May they be free from fear. May they live happily. May they be released from suffering. May they not be deprived of their fortune justly acquired. All have Kamma as their own. All right. Okay, friends. Well, it is Monday evening, night, maybe Tuesday, depending on where you are. But that means it is time for another 2-hour Festival of Dhamma with the Maggasekha community. It's time for Dhammapalooza. In Dhammapalooza, we do a variety of different Dhamma-related activities, and what we do and how we do it is almost always decided by the community. I do multiple events during the week, and most of those events have a specific sutta or specific topic, but I like to have Dhammapalooza be a community-guided event where each time it's different. I think last week it was mostly a Q&A, or did we read I think we read one sutta last week. This week, maybe there's no questions. Maybe it's just reading suttas. Maybe we do some sutta or word roulette. Who knows? We'll see how it goes. So for the next couple of minutes in the chat, if you have any questions, you could put that in the chat. If you have any topics you'd like me to give a talk on, you could put that in the chat. If you have any topics for discussion for myself and the community, you could put that in the chat. So however you like. And as always, I always have a sutta in my back pocket, if I had one, ready for us to read. So we'll see how it goes. All right, just looking through the chat here. Bante, can you talk about practical ways we can approach letting go of self-view while still remaining motivated by the possible impacts of negative karma on ourselves? It's a fool's errand to worry about negative karma. It really is. At least in terms of negative karma that you've committed in the past. It's not really worth. The Buddha says, don't be attached to the past, don't be attached to the future. Buddha also says, don't be attached to the present. Right? So many people say, stay in the present moment. But even the present we can be attached to. So with our karma, the only volition, the only action we have in terms of our karma is the karma that we commit now that leads to vipaka, or fruit, in the future. Whatever happens to you, whatever level of karma is involved in it, doesn't really help at all to try to figure that out, because we all have vast stores of bad and good karma that we've committed in our past lives. So the focus should really be on, well, how can I act skillfully, have perfect my sila and do meritorious deeds now. That's the most important thing. Letting go of self-view, that's, in some ways, that's separate. That's a separate issue. One of the things that, as you understand the gradual process of realizing that, crossing out things in your experience that you thought were you, me, mine, myself before, and they're not, that doesn't make you more, that doesn't make you like more lazy to do the practice. Actually, it's insight into understanding the nature of reality and how things work, including dependent origination, because anatta and paticca samuppada are like this. You really can't understand one without the other in many ways. So as your self-view drops, if anything, your motivation for the practice increases, because you understand what you're doing much more than you did when you first started out. You understand the mechanisms behind, and then how to work with those mechanisms, how to manipulate them in a skillful way, so that you lead yourself towards awakening. This is a tough one to have practical ways, because the question itself is a fairly deep one. So it's kind of hard to, it's not necessarily something that easily lends itself to a practical, quick solution that I can give you that fixes it all, because this is deep Dhamma. This is deep Dhamma that we're talking about, in terms of not self and karma and these kind of things. So I think that's probably about the best I can answer that question. If you have any clarifying questions, follow-up questions, you can feel free to ask those. Gregory says, Bante, I've heard that Dhamma should be taught by monastics and not lay people. Is that based on the suttas or merely someone's personal opinion? If you wanted to go by the sutta ideal, only arahants should be teaching people. So that would pretty much knock out about 99% of monastics, let alone lay people. Like, the ideal teacher is an arahant. The Buddha says, like, when the Buddha talks about the qualities of one who is as a teacher of the Dhamma. But this is just the ideal, right? We understand that different people are at different levels, and they are tasked with sharing the Dhamma in some way or another. There's no rule, there's no stated thing that says lay people can't be Dhamma teachers. And we even have an example of one in the suttas, Householder Chitta, who taught monks. So it's not necessarily that lay teachers are worse than monastics, or that they can't be teachers. I would say, though, in my experience, it's a very rare lay teacher who really has the understanding on all a variety of different levels to teach the suttas very deeply. I think there's a lot of monks that I've heard give Dhamma talks that kind of like, I guess. I mean, I don't know where you're getting that, but maybe your teacher told you this. Who knows? But that's my perspective from the suttas, anyway. Um, so no, I think that lay teachers are fine. The problem comes with the kind of Protestant English, American ethos of, well, we don't need any monks. Well, if you don't have monks, you don't have Buddhism. It's as simple as that. Same thing if you don't have lay people, you don't have Buddhism. Buddhism is the fourfold assembly: monks and lay people, or monastics and lay people, right? Bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, laymen, laywomen. So if one of if one half of that is not there, there's no Buddhism. There's maybe a shell or a skeleton, which is what you see a lot in a lot of like secular and lay quasi Buddhist organizations. You see a skeleton. But when you hear people talk, it's kind of like, yeah, yeah, it's very lacking. Very lacking. I can't think of a lay teacher today that comes close to some of the best monastic teachers. And that would make sense, wouldn't it? I mean, the idea is that a monastic is a specialist. Just like in ancient times, as people started moving to cities, and people were blacksmiths and cobblers and fletchers and farriers and all these different jobs. Monks are supposed to be specialists in the Dhamma. Doesn't mean they are, but that's the goal. That's the idea, is being a specialist in the Dhamma. In the West, there's so much demand that what you've seen is the growth of lay teacher industries. You've seen lay teacher, diploma mills, things like that, like IMS, Barry, and things like that, to meet that demand. And hey, what can you say? I think that's a good thing. There's not that many monks. If you say only monks could teach, well, a very small fraction of people would ever be able to hear the Dhamma, at least live. I mean, online is another thing, but how few places would there be locally for people to go to? So no, this is more of an opinion than anything. I mean, it could be part of the, there could be I think behind it a little thing about monastics, protecting their jobs, like state workers or union people or whatever. They kind of like, I don't like this new change for some reason, but really it's, because hey, my job is going to be affected or something like that. It's like, so maybe monastics are like, well, we gotta have job security over here. So no. um I still think lay teachers should be held. I think anybody who teaches the Dhamma should be held to a high standard, lay or monastic. That's what I think. Oh, this is an interesting. I mean, it's more a comment than a question per se, but somebody I really respect and admire recently said they thought I used to be fake. This is the thing, right? What does it mean to be fake? I think in modern Western parlance, fake is like you're putting on an act, or you're like putting on a mask, right? You're trying to be something or somebody that you're not. Uh, but they mean I'm not anymore. But I it was really hurtful, and now I don't know how to be around them. Would you advise on how not to try to be a fake person? I thought I was authentic, but now I see ways I'm fake, like a fake voice when I'm trying to be nice or when I first meet people. Like how to be authentic. So, part of being authentic is, on the one hand, not caring what people think about you, but on the other hand, being open to criticism that might actually be right and productive. Like that's really important. Now, there's criticism from people who are not acting in good faith and who are malicious. You just ignore that. That's water off a duck's back. Words are wind. You just ignore that because that's a useless person who's you're not going to get much benefit from worrying about what they say about you. But if somebody is doing so in good faith, then you might be able to learn something from it to better yourself. This is something that most likely this person was not being malicious in saying that. Most likely this person was, kind of almost trying to give you a compliment in a way, like talking about your progression or something to that effect. And you're probably seeing a little bit too much into it. And especially if this is somebody you know fairly well for a fairly long amount of time, sometimes people are just not good with, social lubrication. If you have been around a lot of like autistic or autism spectrum people, that's not their skill. They're not really good at that. So they will just blurt out things and say things straight because that's just how they understand things. They just say it. Um, you know, um, and of course there's cultural differences too. Like you say, I put in a fake voice when trying to be nice. One of the things that I saw, and this is not just Italian, but as I found out later, but one of the things that I saw a lot, right, with my mother and many Italian women, that they'd be like yelling at the kids or whatever, and the phone goes, "Oh, how you doing? Hi, hi." It's like this kind of, and I always think like, that's so fake. That's so, but there's cultural things. There's a whole bunch of different levels of things like that, and we all do wear a mask. I mean, honestly, I'm pretty open. I'm much more of an open book than most people, let alone most monks. But there are things about me and things that I've done in the past and stuff like that I don't talk about because it's not really beneficial to anybody, nor myself. So, not that I put on a mask, but there are things that I don't freely share with people. And some people are less freely sharing than others. I find it personally to be more freeing to be kind of open, right? Like I'm not trying to hide anything, and if I do something stupid and everybody sees it, at least like I don't have to worry about keeping that secret. It's like, okay, well, everybody saw it. It was on the live stream, whatever. you know um so authenticity is about that kind of mixture of not caring what people think and humility to listen to people who might have something that you need to hear. Right? That's a large part of authenticity. And a large part of that also comes with being being okay with who you are. And then okay with who you are. It's okay. Like, I'm not a perfect person and I try to do good, and it is what it is. I don't have any regrets. I don't have, this or that. And if people don't like me, they don't like me. If they like me, they like me. Whatever it is, the worldly wins. So, yeah, I would examine like what you think that's fake about yourself, investigate that, and go deep into it. Why do you have a quote unquote fake voice when you're trying to meet people? I think most people put up like a good front when they're meeting people for the first time. Like when guests would come over, my family would be like, we got to make sure the house is clean, everything's perfect, everybody's good, everybody, don't do something stupid, don't say anything stupid, all these kind of things. It's like, there's a social aspect to it. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that per se, because first impressions are important. um they are. That's just the nature of human society. First impressions are important. So you put a lot of pressure and a lot of stock on making those impressions good. And it's not even necessarily that you're trying to be fake about it. You're just trying to show somebody your best self. And then when you live with them, well, the rest of their selves come out too. You see, that's like like in relationships, like the first couple of months of like this honeymoon period. But then once you like live with the person for a long time, and then it's kind of like you start to see all the chinks in the armor and the flaws and all of that stuff that come out when somebody's comfortable. Let's see. Hello, Visaka and Isla. Welcome. Hi, Isla. I don't know where we got into talking about mothers and fathers. This is just from me talking about my own experiences. It's like all of a sudden now we're talking about mothers and fathers. It's quite interesting, but um, still a good topic. So, was there anything else you wanted me to talk about in specific, Karuna, or did I cover everything for you? Yes, I want to give the best version of myself as an act of kindness and generosity. Nobody wants to deal with the grumpy or whiny version of yourself when they don't know anything else. Yeah, very good. All right, scrolling back up. Okay, here we go. This is an easy one. Where did it go? Sorry, my funky mouse scroll wheel is throwing me all over the place. Here we go. How do we know if we've experienced insights? You'll know. How will you know? Well, all of a sudden you will know something so clearly that you will wonder why you never saw it before. This often comes with a very profound period, of kind of like calm and like a deep stillness. I don't mean like while you're in meditation, just it's a very obvious experience once you've had it. Hard to describe. But, these days insights come wider away. In the earlier days they came in shorter shorter distances from each other. But typically what happens is you have a deep insight and you have this period of like awe, and it's in that period of awe that people overestimate their attainments. Like Ajahn Brang, when he tells the story about how he thought he was enlightened until he saw greed and hatred in his mind, then he realized he wasn't. Right? When you have an insight, doesn't necessarily mean anything other than you have an insight. Don't jump to, oh, am I this? Am I that? Have I attained this? Have I attained that? That's just grounds for delusion. So don't bother with that. Just understand the insight, understand the experience, and understand that the experience that you're going through, that state of awe, that awesome state, will not last forever. It is impermanent. The insight that you've gained doesn't go away. That's still there. But the awe from that period of awe, that period of feeling like a deep connection, a deep insight, that is impermanent. That goes away. And then it's back to regular life. But it's back to regular life, and you're just that much more insightful. You're just that little less ignorant and deluded. But you're still ignorant and deluded, so you just keep going. But like many things, in my experience, like for instance, people will say to Bhante G, I remember, how do I know if I'm a Sotipana, a stream enter? And Bhante G says, if you have to ask, you're not. And my experience has been so far that you do have a deep knowing. You know when you're experiencing something. This is why I'm like 99% sure I've never been in jhana. I've been close. I've been around the edges. But even like Bhante Ji said the same thing. You will know jhana as compared to any other state. It's a very different, very clearly knowing state. But oh boy, is there such delusion around jhana and how people, even teachers, have misunderstandings and how easy it is to get into it or hard it is to get into it. All these things. But there's a kind of deep knowing that you experience, and it's just like this: water is wet, and the sun rises in the morning. You know it, and are sure of it, just like the suttas say. And so the insights will pile up. The insights will come when the causes and conditions are right for them. Don't think you're going to go to a 7-day retreat and then during the retreat or right after the retreat, you're going to have all these insights. That's not how it works. Causes and conditions are not ripe for them to arise yet. You've set some seeds. And then maybe 6 months later, you're online at a supermarket and you have an insight from something very mundane. That's how it goes. Right? It's not like you don't waste your time if you go on retreats. You do not. It's very beneficial and important for the path. But don't expect much of anything but lots of suffering when you go on a retreat. And then when other things happen, you'll be pleasantly surprised and awed. So Bhante, I've been reflecting on how we hold on to self when thinking about our liberation or future karma, or this one. Hoping for a good rebirth for ourselves, etc. Okay, that's fine. Even awakened ones think in or speak in such ways. I have achieved the end of samsara, etc., etc. So there's the mundane and the transcendent. Right? The mundane way of engaging with the world is through me, mine, myself. But an awakened one may use those words and speak of that perspective, but they understand that there's no permanent essence there. There really is no me, mine, myself, other than in very mundane ways. Whether you're a self or you fully understand you're just a group of 5 aggregates, you're still suffering. You're still being reborn. You're still in samsara. So the job is the same. It doesn't matter one way or the other. It's just a matter of if you're perceiving things as me, mine, and myself, and in a deep, ignorant, and deluded way, or not. All right. Bhante, can you share some reflections on cultivating passaddhi in meditation and daily life practice? Passaddhi is tranquility. And if I'm not mistaken, it's connected to the same word that means like a fortress or a castle. I have to double check that. But it's interesting imagery in that regard. So this is a calm, tranquil mind. That's what it is. And we develop that in a variety of different ways. We develop it through satipatthana. We develop it through anapanasati. We develop it through letting go, not being so attached to the ways of the world and how things are going. Right? One of my favorite, absolute favorite quotes from Ajahn Brahm, which I think is a perfect encapsulation of ignorance in the Buddhist situation, in the Buddhist sending is, and I remember I heard this way back like 2007, one of his talks back then. But he says, suffering is asking from the world what it can never give you. And boy, do we ever do that. We expect the world to be a certain way. We expect things to be a certain way. And we rage against the machine when it's not that way. But despite all my rage, we're still just rats in samsara. We're just on the rat. We're still in the rat race. So you practice letting go. And the more you let go, the more pasadi, the more tranquility, peacefulness, calmness of your mind. It's a slow process. And the letting go is not something that you can necessarily force much. It's something that naturally arises from insight and wisdom. Going back to Karuna, I just feel really awkward around the person who said I was fake, though. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Unless you see some reason why they might have been malicious to you, just think of it as a faux pas. It's okay. And also reflect on, does their perception of me really equal me? Right? How many people have so many different perceptions of you? Do all those perceptions have to be have control over you? No. And nor can you try to control the perceptions of everybody who knows you. This is not how it works. Even totalitarian governments who, with all kinds of propaganda and media and all kinds of stuff like that, most people who are thinking people know that they're fooling themselves by allowing themselves to go along with it. Right? Like most people know deep down what's truthful and what's not. And so if you have that view, then it doesn't matter what they think. Right? At the very least, you can think, oh, well, they think maybe I've become better, I've progressed. I don't, I don't agree with their perception of what I was and what I am or whatever, but that's their perception. And perception is faulty. Just look at how faulty my perception is 100 times a day, every day. It is what it is. What or who is Maya? I've heard and read different things. This is not really something in Theravada. Maya is like existence, like the world, and in Mahayana. And I don't know a lot about it, but what I understand, Maya is like alluding to the illusory nature of reality. Right? In the sutras, the Buddha does not go into detail about the nature of reality in this way, but in later traditions, they do. So, like everything is like the whole world is an illusion, the whole world is an imagination, which the Buddha does not say in the suttas. Um, so it's a bit of a different perspective. Hello, Soma Drums. How much of the Pali Canon do you believe is accurate, very close to what the Buddha originally said? If I recall correctly, Bhante Sujattu says that the canon is very close, like 80 to 90% of what he said. So we can never really know exactly what the Buddha said. But the suttas in the Pali and the agamas in the Sanskrit for the Mahayana are the closest we will ever get, unless we find some secret stash somewhere, to the actual words of the Buddha. And the suttas are extremely internally consistent. There's very little to no actual contradictions in the suttas. In 5,000 pages, there's almost no contradictions. And most of the times I thought I found a contradiction, through later insight and understanding, I realized it was not a contradiction. So this is important to understand in this regard. And what you see in there, in these early texts, so what Bhante Sujattu was saying here is that when you do comparative textual analysis, when you analyze the same sutta in the Pali and in the Sanskrit, they're about 90 to 95% the same exact thing, which is a really impressive feat, because you have, most people think oral tradition is less accurate than written tradition. They're about the same, by the way. And this is from an anthropology major. I knew about oral tradition even before I got into Buddhism and started reading the suttas. So what we have is the suttas being written down independently of each other, thousands of miles apart in different languages, and being like 90 to 95% the same. That is something that's rare in human history. That is a very rare thing, that this is so accurate. And so people who do cross-textual analysis use that as a guide to say what is oldest. You can't really say that this is exactly what the Buddha says. You can't. Because we just weren't there, right? So, like, that's the only really way you can know. But when you look at the suttas, you can see, because oral tradition is all about repetition. And in the suttas, there are things that are talked about and taught about and repeated thousands of times. And there are things that you see once in 5,000 pages. So you can kind of think, well, what are the important themes? What are the real important teachings? It's the ones that are repeated thousands of times, right? Because we want these, they wanted these to be remembered. So in traditional Theravada, the suttas are Buddha Vachana, the word of the Buddha. They traditional Theravada views the suttas as the actual words of the Buddha. Closest will ever be. So yeah, it's the closest we'll ever get to the actual words of the Buddha. And I would suspect the overwhelming majority of the suttas are pretty much the word of the Buddha. Perennial Deju says Maya is all over Vedanta, so Hinduism as well. Yeah, I don't know. Thank you, Karuna. So yeah, they're definitely not the same word. They might have a similar root, but they're not the same word. Totem says, "What is the benefit of studying Abhidhamma? It's mostly an intellectual pursuit, or is it critical for understanding the teaching?" Um, that depends on who you ask. To be honest with you, I don't think it's critical to understanding the teaching. Although in most of the Buddhist world, Abhidhamma is taught over suttas in pretty much almost anything else. So it's in traditional Theravada, Abhidhamma is very important, even more important than the suttas. Because it's seen as a higher teaching. So I think depending on your personality and depending on your way of thinking, Abhidhamma may be helpful or maybe not be helpful. For me, it's never been helpful. I read a good chunk of it in my early years. It didn't call to me. It wasn't anything that I found important. And then I also saw how it contradicts the suttas in some ways, and I was like, yeah, I'm a sutta. I'm ride or die with the suttas. So I I'm gonna see Abhidhamma as I shall say a lesser reference, if anything. But I don't study it. I don't read it. It's not part of my practice or my path at all. So it depends on the person. Isn't it accepted Abhidhamma is technically not the words of the Buddha? Um, by like Western secular scholarship, yes. By Buddhism, no. It's considered it's the same thing. So the Abhidhamma and the Mahayana scriptures have the same alibi. The alibi is the Buddha knew he couldn't teach these because they were kind of advanced, so he only taught them in the heavenly realms, and then later they came down. Think of that as you will. Um, I don't buy it per se. I think that's later people's trying to solidify the importance of what they're writing, in my opinion. But there are people like Bhante Sujato and stuff will point to a kind of there were echoes or a womb of an Abhidhamma even in the early texts. I don't think that's deniable. It was there at a certain level, but it was later refined and made into something much bigger later on. All right. So it's 6 o'clock. The chat has come to an end. I'll give it another minute, and if nothing comes up, maybe we'll do some meditation. All right. Bhante, can you share some reflections on celebrating Vesak and the cultivation of faith? So, Vesak, as we kind of know it now, is a modern invention as a kind of like global Buddhist holiday. This is not really, um, yeah, it's a modern invention in some ways. Now, however, that being said, the root is from a very ancient, if you want to call it, holiday. So the idea, so in traditional Theravada, every single new and full moon has some kind of story or important event related to it. Every single one. You can actually look them up and find out. And so the full moon in May, which is coincidentally the same moon that the Buddha was born under, became awakened under, and had parinibbana under, is probably the one that's the most revered and and celebrated. So it's a very natural thing that you would have this thing in the UN in the 1940s creating this big global Buddhist event called Vesak. Before that, each of the different traditions and countries kind of did their own thing, and I don't know. Um, I don't know what they did, to be honest with you, because it was a long time ago. But so the idea of Vesak is reflecting on these three major events. And it's connected with the idea of reflecting on the fact that the Buddha arose in the world. This is a very important act of faith, right? Because in the early days of Buddhism, before there were such things as Buddha statues, you had elements that pointed to the Buddha having been here and not anymore. The footprint, the empty chair, etc. So it's an article of reverence. It's an article of faith in the Buddha's awakening and confidence in the teachings that you revere such an event. This is what Vesak is about. The Buddha was here in this very world in India 2,600 years ago and walked among everybody. He was at one point a human, just like all of us. And he found this Dhamma and proclaimed this Dhamma. And then he became fully extinguished. So it's a reflection on that. And also, it's a really fun time to make cool Sri Lankan lanterns. I remember my first, one of my first or my second Vesak. It might have been my second Vesak going to Bhavana. I got to sit with Bhante Silananda for about 8 hours and make these Sri Lankan lanterns. And it was exhausting and I was tired by the end, but it was really neat to sit with Bhante Sila and make these things. And they're quite beautiful. I've read that the Eightfold Path may have been added later by monastics to help memorize the teaching. Do you think this holds any weight? This makes no sense whatsoever. I've never heard of this, and I would really be interested in hearing the logic and the reasoning behind this. This is one of those things that you just see thousands of times in the suttas. I, I mean, you do have to accept that there's some adding and subtracting in the suttas over time, but this is pretty solid in the early text. This is not. I can't see how this is something that's made up later. It doesn't hold water for me. It was also said that by the same person that four truths was originally four noble truths was originally four truths, which made sense to me. Sorry for accident. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, both of these make no sense to me whatsoever. Chattaro Arya Satcha, four noble truths. You can see it right in the Pali. Yeah, I don't know where it's from, and I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to something like that. Um, I'm looking now for the full new moon meanings, and I could only find them for Magga and Asalha. Well, you probably have to see. I mean, I know Bante G said this, because how I first found out about this when I became an Anagarika, and I found out that this was the concept of being ordained on a um, auspicious day. That's why pretty much in like Buddhist countries, ordinations happen on like full moons or new moons, right? Because they want it's considered an auspicious thing. Like for instance, my pubaja, my going forth, my ordination was on Halloween, 2015. Abate Silananda goes, "This is not an auspicious day. This is not an auspicious day." And I said, Bate, well, Halloween's like my favorite holiday, so it's pretty auspicious for me. I don't mind it. So it's easy to remember. I went in robes 9 years ago this Halloween. There, easy to remember. Um, but so that from there, I found out about every one of the full and new moons having, having that some level of meaning. I don't think they all have the equal weight, but they all have some kind of story behind it. Something happened, even if it's a fairly minor thing. So I don't know where you would even find it. And I wouldn't doubt if there's different stories depending on Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma. Who knows? Would I be able to give a link on Discord later? Um, I don't. I mean, I could try to search for it. If you remind me on Discord, and I will. I mean, once I'm settled in Empty Cloud, I'm not gonna do it in the next day or so. But once I'm settled in Empty Cloud and not exhausted, I'll at least try. I'll give a search, or I'll ask um one of the Sri Lankan Bante here, Bante Silaratan, and maybe he'll know. It's probably better to ask somebody from the culture directly. All right. Why don't we now do some meditation, and then we'll do some read a little Dhammapada and call it a night. So everybody here, well, it's a short meditation, but why don't we'll do some guided metta. How about that? Because I think there's at least one person here I don't know that they're familiar with my guided. So if they're new, I want to give some guided meditation. So close your eyes. Set your body up in a comfortable and stable position. Once you're content with your position, start to follow the breath, observing as the body breathes in and out. For the rest of this guided meditation, we'll do a practice of metta, developing limitless goodwill for all beings in our minds. The practice of metta uses both words and visuals, and I'll be providing both. You can choose to use one or both, or neither, whatever works best for you. But we'll start by developing metta for the person whom we may have the most agitation towards, maybe even hatred towards. That person is ourselves. We cannot hope to give metta out to all beings if we don't have it to give. So we'll start by saying some words of metta. If you like, you can visualize a sphere or circle around you. And as we say the words, you can imagine filling that sphere with your goodwill, your friendliness. If you like, for this, you could also visualize yourself in front of you, like looking in the mirror, and say the words to that image. So repeat these words after me. May I find happiness. May I find peace. May I live in friendship with all beings. May I find release from suffering. When we use words for metta, it's not meant to be like a mantra, just something we're repeating over and over. Take your time with each one of these lines and really say the words like you're saying and wishing them for a best friend or a close family relative. You could even think good thoughts about yourself, encouraging thoughts. Really try to feel the goodwill and fill your sphere with these words. May I find happiness. May I find peace. May I live in friendship with all beings. May I find release from suffering. As you're doing this metta, there may be a part of your mind that fights against it, thinking the words are stupid or corny. That's a good sign. That means that the metta is starting to uproot ill will, aversion, agitation. Keep going. Now we'll spread our sphere out to encompass the entirety of whatever building you're in, whatever human beings, animals, insects, seen and unseen beings there may be. May all of us in this building find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Spread the sphere out to encompass the entirety of whatever town or village or city you're in. May all of us in this town find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. When we say these words, we should do it in an honest and sincere way with the wish that all beings know what is good. This is why we wish that they find happiness. They must know how to act skillful to find that happiness, to find peace, be free from suffering, to live in friendship with all beings. All these must be worked for and developed. And just as we do this and see the benefits of that, so too do we wish all beings also develop and see the benefit of these. Spread your sphere to encompass the entirety of whatever country you're in. May all of us in this country find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Friends, when we practice metta like the sun shines its rays down on all things without categorization, distinction, discrimination, likes and dislikes. When we practice metta, things like ethnicity, sex, gender, politics, religion, sports teams, city rivalries, whatever different ways we categorize ourselves, none of that matters. Doesn't matter if you like or dislike a politician or people in different parties or whatever. You practice giving metta out to all beings. Metta is appamana, limitless, and mahagada, exalted, expanding, large, encompassing all. Spread your sphere out to encompass the entirety of this earth. You can visualize your sphere of metta encompassing the whole planet, pervading trillions of beings on the air, land, and sea. May all of us on this earth find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Spread your sphere out to encompass this Milky Way galaxy, our home galaxy, as we expand out into the cosmos. Hundreds of billions of stars and planets. Who knows what life, wherever they may be. There's no limitations We practice having no limitations to our metta. We don't have to know the beings or see them in front of us to have a mind of goodwill. May all of us in this Milky Way find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Now spread your sphere out infinitely into the cosmos, covering the known universe, the entire universe, and wherever beings in samsara may be, who knows? Other dimensions, other universes, we don't know. It doesn't matter. Spread your limitless goodwill, friendliness out to all beings, all siblings in suffering, everywhere. May all of us in existence, everywhere, find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Slowly start to come back through the universe, the galaxy, the earth, your country, state, village, town, room, opening your eyes, becoming aware of the room around you, your body's position in it, reflecting on the state of your mind before and after the meditation, and contemplating any experiences that stood out. And while you do that, I'll bring up Dhammapada and we'll start reading. The holy man. Exert yourself, O holy man. Cut off the stream of craving and discard sense desires. Knowing the destruction of all the conditioned things, become, O holy man, the knower of the uncreated, or the unconditioned, Nibbana. When the holy man has reached the summit of two paths, concentration and insight, samatha and vipassana, he knows the truth, and all his fetters fall away. He for whom there is neither this shore nor the other shore, nor yet both, he who is free of cares and is unfettered, him do I call a holy man. He who is meditative, stainless, and settled, whose work is done, and who is free from cankers, having reached the highest goal, him do I call the holy man. The sun shines by day, the moon shines by night, the warrior shines in armor, the holy man shines in meditation, but the Buddha shines resplendent all day and all night. Because he has discarded evil, he is called a holy man. Because he is serene in conduct, he is called a recluse. And because he has renounced his impurities, he is called a renunciate. One should not strike a holy man, nor should a holy man, when struck, give way to anger. Shame on him who strikes a holy man, and more shame on him who gives way to anger. Nothing is better for a holy man than when he holds up his mind back from what is endearing. To the extent the intent to harm wears away, to that extent does suffering subside. He who does no evil deed, word, and thought, who is restrained in these three ways, him do I call a holy man. Just as a Brahmin priest reveres his sacrificial fire, even so should one devoutly revere the person from whom one has learned the Dhamma taught by the Buddha. Not by matted hair, nor by lineage, nor by birth does one become a holy man. But he in whom truth and righteousness exist, he is pure, he is a holy man. What is the use of your matted hair, O witless man? What of your garment of antelope's hide? Within you is the tangle of passion. Only outwardly do you cleanse yourself. The person who wears a robe made of rags, who is lean, with veins showing all over the body, and who meditates alone in the forest, him do I call a holy man. I do not call him a holy man because of his lineage or high-born mother. If he is full of impeding attachments, he is just a supercilious man. But who is free from impediments and clinging, him do I call a holy man. He who, having cut off all fetters, trembles no more, who has overcome all attachments and is emancipated, him do I call a holy man. He who has cut off the thong of hatred, the band of craving, and the rope of false views, together with opportunences, latent evil tendencies, he who has removed the crossbar of ignorance and is enlightened, him do I call a holy man. He who without resentment endures abuse, beating and punishment, whose power, real might, is patience, him do I call a holy man. He who is free from anger is devout, virtuous, and without craving, self-subdued, and bears his final body, him do I call a holy man. Like water on a lotus leaf, or a mustard seed on the point of a needle, he who does not cling to sensual pleasures, him do I call a holy man. He who in this very life realizes for himself the end of suffering, who has laid aside the burden and become emancipated, him do I call a holy man. He who has profound knowledge, who is wise, skilled in discerning and right or wrong path, and has reached the highest goal, him do I call a holy man. He who holds aloof from householders and ascetics alike, and wanders about with no fixed abode but few wants, him do I call a holy man. He who has renounced violence towards all living beings, weak or strong, who neither kills nor causes others to kill, him do I call a holy man. He who is friendly amidst the hostile, peaceful amidst the violent, and unattached amidst the attached, him do I call a holy man. He whose lust and hatred, pride and hypocrisy have fallen off like a mustard seed from the point of a needle, him do I call a holy man. He who utters gentle, instructive, and truthful words, who imprecates none, him do I call a holy man. He who in this world takes nothing that is not given to him, be it long or short, small or big, good or bad, him do I call a holy man. He who wants nothing of either this world or the next, who is desire-free and emancipated, him do I call a holy man. He who has no attachment, who through perfect knowledge is free from doubts and has plunged into the deathless, him do I call a holy man. He who in the world has transcended the ties of both merit and demerit, who is sorrowless, stainless, and pure, him do I call a holy man. He who, like the moon, is spotless and pure, serene and clear, who has destroyed delight in existence, him do I call a holy man. He who, having traversed this miry, perilous, and delusive round of existence, has crossed over and reached the other shore, who is meditative, calm, free from doubt, and, clinging to nothing, has attained to nibbana, him do I call a holy man. He who, having abandoned sensual pleasures, has renounced the household life and become a homeless one, has destroyed both sensual desire and continued existence, him do I call a holy man. He who, having abandoned craving, has renounced the household life and become a homeless one, has destroyed both craving and continued existence, him do I call a holy man. He who, casting off human bonds and transcending heavenly ties, is wholly delivered from all bondages, him do I call a holy man. He who, having cast off likes and dislikes, has become tranquil, is rid of the substrata of existence, and like a hero has conquered all the worlds, him do I call a holy man. He who in every way knows the death and rebirth of all beings and is totally detached, blessed, and enlightened, him do I call a holy man. He whose track no gods or angels or no humans can trace, the Arhat who has destroyed all the cankers, him do I call a holy man. He who clings to nothing of the past, present, and future, who has no attachment and holds on to nothing, him do I call a holy man. He, the noble, the excellent, the heroic, the great sage, the conqueror, the passionless, the pure, the enlightened one, him do I call a holy man. He who knows his former births, who sees heaven and hell, who has reached the end of births and attained the perfection of insight, the sage who has reached the summit of spiritual excellence, him do I call a holy man. And we have once again come to the end of the Dhammapada. So next week we will go back after Dhammapalooza. We'll start from the beginning again. All right, friends. So why don't we do final business and share merit, and then we'll call it a night. Okay, friends. So if you are finding this website or this stream for the first time, you'd like to find out more information about myself and the organization I'm building called Maggasekha, Student of the Path, then you can go to the website listed on the screen, maggasekha.org, maggasekha.org. Here, this is my headquarters. Every time I do anything, every time there's a new stream, there's a new article, there's a new retreat, there's a new I'm traveling, whatever, everything is posted on this website. And you can, in the top right, you can put your email in, and then you will get an email every time something new comes up on the website. All right. Now we shall share screen to share merit. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, sokha patta chane sokha, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampatang punya sampatang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasata chabumata deva naga mahedika, punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit of ours that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sad. JRF comes in with the last question at the end. What can I expect by going to a retreat at Bhavana? I have no idea. I haven't been there in almost 5 years. And so any information I could tell you is probably well out of date. So if you like, send me an email and we can talk about general. If this is your first retreat period, we could talk about general things. But I have no idea how a retreat at Bhavana is these days. So I can't really say much. All right, friends. Well, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again, which, if I'm not in a plane crash, might be next Monday for a morning monastery, or next Monday for Dhammapalooza, or maybe later in the week for morning monastery experience. Maybe. Who knows? We'll have to see how things go. But either way, have a good week.